Moving on with the series then, this is also the episode where the Boilers kind of decide, you know what, screw this Guardian business, we don't want none of it, let's go work at a lumber mill.
To which I say, finally. I mean, really, like I said, it was just becoming formulaic and monotonous at some point, I mean, kids move in with the Guardian, Count Olaf manages to infiltrate the Guardian's household, kills Guardian, kids move on to next Guardian. I mean...
All right. Well, in the next episode, the lumber mill episode, I can't remember what it was called exactly.
Smells...
Well, Lucky Smells and Lumber Mill. But
yeah.
I can't remember what the episode was called, but I'm not worried about that right now. So the kids move into a lumber mill. They're amazed at this town and the connections with VFD that it has. Count Olaf shows up. He kills off, or almost kills off, a few of the lumber mill employees. And then he gets chased out of town. No, hold on.
I mean,
I thought you said it was getting formulaic.
It is a little. It's a cat and mouse. It's like Tom and Jerry, except Jerry comes out a little more on top than he usually does.
But this episode does have a couple of unique twists as a season 1 closer.
I agree.
In particular, there is Count Olaf's assistant in this one who is unique, the eye doctor.
Yes. Because she was a member of VFD as well, if I remember correctly, right?
It's kind of vague. I think she was. She used hypnosis or something and was very controversial within VFD.
She was. Because her methods seemed pretty... seemed to undermine their values, particularly regarding free will.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the more kind of mindfucky episodes where it deals much more with... Oh no, Claus is hypnotized and doesn't know what he's doing and being blamed for the things he's doing than most episodes will ever be in the future of this series especially. And I think that I would take some time to also mention that this is where the parent subplot of the first season has its climax here, which I'm not going to go into that much. But it does have its climax here. It's a good payoff, especially for people who've read the books. It's a wonderful little detail. Works best if you haven't read or watched the movies before.
I've got to say, this is the one thing that annoys me about this series. They'll introduce something, and they will dangle that carrot in front of you, compelling you to go through the entire series, hoping you can get your answer to this one specific thing. And then...
Disappointment is a virtue. I think this is also the first episode where the Baudelaire orphans in particular are actually kind of responsible for what happens around them. Most notably, the death of the eye doctor.
Was that really at the fault of the Baudelaires? I mean, well, then again, actually,
yes
hold on.
And no. This is where the series makes a major departure from the books. In the books, there's this whole sword fight that Sunny has with the eye doctor. She falls into the furnace to save, but it's mostly the fault of the Baudelaires in the books. Whereas in the show, this is much more the fault of Count Olaf and his actions combined with the Baudelaires.
That's true.
Of course, this is also where the show kind of does make a kind of a fun stand where it just says, this whole plotline is stupid. I hate these kinds of overly complicated gimmicks. Get out of here. And then they kill her off, just to make sure we don't have to deal with this anymore.
God.
Because one thing I will say is that this is a plotline that's not fun to have in your shows or in your movies or anything else. It really is this kind of intrigue plot about who's controlling him, who's doing the mastermind stuff. But it's just not a fun plotline because it's always underwhelming no matter how it goes.
Speaking of the deaths, I mean, I'm under the impression that this show is rated PG, and yet they have so many deaths on screen and off screen.
I think there's a lot of implied gruesome deaths, but they're not shown, so it's good enough for the MPA.
Really? Because, I mean... It's one thing for the parents to die. I mean, a lot of parents die in kids' movies, but I mean...
a lot of things happen just off-screen, where it's implied to be terrible, but you don't see the details. You don't see Aunt Josephine get horribly maimed. You don't see the poison actually kill Aunt Uncle Monty.
But you do see cadavers, which is kind of a slight change.
I don't think you actually see the cadavers by and large.
Really?
They're covered up, or the body is not to be found.
you do see that's true. I mean, the body is veiled, but really, you don't really see bodies being usually carried away in PG movies. I mean, I'm just saying it's just a morbid take on a kid's show, I feel like.
All right. This episode ends with Poe the baker finding the kids.
Oh, Christ.
Oh, this episode also has something unique from the books as well, which is the first implied homosexual relationship.
That's right. It's done
in a way where it's progressive enough and simple enough for kids. I applaud the way they approach this relationship, because it's not in your face enough that it's like a big deal that they're gay, but it's implied enough that there is representation.
And it's so casual, yeah.
Which is probably the way to handle representation, is to have it be a casual thing, nothing else.
Power to them. I mean, and that kind of caught me off guard, because I'm thinking, did that also happen in the books? No way.
It was not quite in the books. There was some implication, but they never really got into relationships in the books in general.
So the books just really kept it ambiguous, but the show just kind of really confirmed it?
Well, yeah, that's a big difference between the books and the show, is that the books were a lot of times very vague about details with VFD, with the lives of the people they're with. Generally, and this is something that, again, I'll get into as we get to later parts of the story, the focus is kept on the Baudelaires and their struggles. Everything else is a detail to their story.
Okay.
Now, let's get into the school.
Let's!
So Mr. Poe finds them and decides, you know what's wrong with these kids? They don't have proper education.
So the best solution to that
is toss them in a shack.
Essentially, actually, that's what literally happened.
That's right. Now, they go to Purfuck Preparatory School with the very catchy slogan, Memento Mori.
Which essentially translates to "You will die."
Remember, you will die.
Again, that's one of those
catchy slogans. Now, this is also where, if you're someone who read the books first, this is the biggest departure from the books. A lot of things do change from the books.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of things. So the meeting with the vice principal is a little bit different, but not that different. But yeah, the kids enroll in the school. They meet with the vice principal, who tells them that because they are filthy orphans, they will have to live in the filthy orphan shack.
Oh, that's consistent.
Their solution to the crabs is actually quite a bit different than what it was in the books. Because in the books, their solution is basically get some salt to dry up the fungus on the ceiling and make shoes with metal clippings on them to act as a deterrent for the crabs.
Oh, okay.
But they come up with a much more kind of simplistic version of this, which is easier for the Baudelaires in the show. Which this is a major change from the books, and a lot of things change as well. In particular, the librarian doesn't really show up in the books.
Ooh.
The beat a dead horse slogan doesn't really show up in the books, unfortunately. I love that slogan.
I died when I heard that. I found that very funny.
But this is also where you run into the same problem of ambiguous technology, because a lot of things in this episode, and this is part of the attempts by the crew of the Netflix adaptation to make something unique. This is where you simultaneously run into a lot of the things that they do well, which is introduce more information about VFD and show what they're doing behind the scenes with Larry your waiter and Kit and the librarian.
Was he ever in the books, Larry your waiter?
No, Larry your waiter was never in the books. But yeah, we see a lot more stuff involving these background characters and what they're doing. I think we also see Jacques Nickets show up at the school.
Played by the talented Will Arnett. The Firefly guy.
That's not the Firefly guy.
Oh, damn it.
He's from Arrested Development.
Oh, that's right.
But yeah, so in the show, the plot itself plays out much like the books. The kids get accused of being lazy by Coach Genghis, their mean new gym teacher.
Emphasis on the word new.
New, yeah, very new. They have to take a test. They pass the test with flying colors, but they still get kicked out of the school because they don't like them. Those darn cake sniffing teens. So next, the kids find a new person to take care of them, a new guardian. And that would be the Squallers, who live at the richest place in the entire world.
Oh, yeah.
A penthouse that folds reality upon itself. Now, this is the first episode that we get where the kids go to a place that is truly magnificent in terms of wealth and income for the parents.
Oh, yeah. No, they are incredibly well off because they introduce these parents as like the sixth wealthiest family in all of town.
The sixth wealthiest bakers.
That's it.
The sixth most prominent financial advisor.
That's it.
And this is where we get introduced to one of our recurring characters, Yzma Squaller. She's played by Lucy Punch. And Lucy Punch is wonderful. I love the way that she plays Yzma Squaller throughout the entire series after this.
I agree. No, she is very talented in this.
And this episode, again, has a lot of the departures from the book as far as VFD's involvement. In the book, we don't have any mention of Jacques Nicket, we don't have the librarian, we don't have Larry or Waiter. A lot of things that happen in this movie don't really happen in the books.
So this is where we start to see the real deviation from the books.
This is also where we get kind of the continuing issue of the technology that just completely takes us out of the story here. Like the suction cup stuff where they climb the entire building of 65 floors.
That's right.
Yeah, this is where things get a little bit silly as far as the side plots go in the new editions. And that's one of my few complaints about the series is that it gets a little bit too silly in a few places.
Right.
Which is kind of understandable given that a lot of the plots and adults are kind of silly and being fooled by Count Olaf's disguises. But it also gets a little bit too silly.
And just confusing. Again, I still cannot figure out what time period they're in based on whatever technology is given here.
I'm going to say it's 1960s. Alternate universe 1960s. But yeah, so over the course of this book, this is the one where they're hunting down the Quagmires, who they met at Prefect Preparatory, the Quagmire triplets.
That's right, the triplets.
Who Count Olaf ultimately succeeded in kidnapping in the last episode, and who kind of ended up being the major theme of season 2 is finding the Quagmires and saving them.
Finding and rescuing.
Now, part of the reason that the Baudelaires go to this new location is because they get kind of a hot tip that the Quagmires are heading this way as well. And, sure enough, Count Olaf shows up in disguise as, I think, a fashion advisor or something for Yzma.
Yeah, some foreign fashion.
Thank you.
Outrageous accents ensue.
His crew opens up a restaurant, a fish-themed restaurant.
Oh God, the herring restaurant.
The red herring. And this is also where VFD comes to be a problem for the first time, which is when when the Baudelaires bet on the very fancy doilies, and it ends up being a red herring. Which is a red herring for the red herring which the Quagmires are in.
That's right, because they originally thought they were imprisoned in a colossal
VFD box,
which housed very fancy doilies.
That's the problem with acronyms.
No kidding, right?
But yeah, this is one of the episodes where I would actually knock the additions from the show, because a lot of the stuff that Jacques Nicket and the librarian do are pretty pointless. Larry Your Waiter doesn't accomplish much. The song that Olaf gets is, it's okay.
It's okay. No.
Oh, and one thing I should mention as well for season 1, speaking of songs, there's a song that plays in the credits of the very first season.
I was not a fan of that at all.
Oh, I like that song a lot.
Really? I thought the singing was very monotone, and especially on the part of the kids. I know they were going for solemn, but I mean...
Yeah, and that is, again, where you see Violet's acting is not super great.
Right. No, I was not impressed with her singing at all. I wasn't impressed with a decent number of their I just wasn't a huge fan of that sauna in general. Again, I know they were going for sunken and solemn, but I felt like they missed the mark and went with monotone. And
That was one that was humming in my head for a while. I actually really like that one.
the theme song I enjoy immensely.
No, not the theme song. I like the theme song a lot too. It's excellent, but the song that they do in that one, the No Happy Endings one, I don't know what it's called.
I don't know what it's called either.
But anyways, yeah. So a lot of the songs in the series generally are hit or miss.
They're mostly just filler. Yeah.
Well, they're filler, but Neil Patrick Harris has a reputation, and he has to sing.
He does.
Again, it's kind of the Jim Carrey effect, where Jim Carrey has to make a silly face at some point in his movie, and Neil Patrick Harris has to sing a song at some point.
I like that. The Jim Carrey effect. That's the first I've heard of this. I like it.
But going back to the episode and its kind of synopsis there, I did not like the additions from the books in this one. This is one of the very few times where I didn't. A lot of stuff that VFD is doing is pointless in this episode and distracts from the plot of the Bottle Layers. Now, part of me thinks it was just filler, just to pad out the runtime of the episode.
Right. And to kind of pander for character diversity, right? Like, get some more famous faces in the series.
I kind of suspect that getting Will Arnett also was something where they really wanted to put him in the spotlight as long as possible and build up Jacques Nickets.
Right.
But speaking of, let's go ahead and go over to the town of VFD.
Now, what does that stand for?
I think something to do with crows.
No, the town VFD. So...
This is one where, both in the books and the series, this is one where it kind of does break the mold of untrustworthy guardians. Oh, by the way, for the last episode too, the Squallers, Jerome Squaller is a character who's particularly interesting to me thematically because he's the first guardian who not only disappoints them but actually backs away and cites fear as his reason for backing away and leaving them to fend for their own.
Right.
This is the first time the Bottlers have been hurt not only by the failures of a guardian, but a guardian who abandoned them.
Right, because they usually, I mean, good news, he's not dead, but I mean, he literally walked away out of.
He walked out of your lives and refused to help you. One of the few people who's in a position that could.
And that's amazing, I mean.
It's also the first time they've had a guardian who was actively out to harm them through Eastman Squaller.
This kind of goes back to what I was mentioning before about suspense, I mean, they telegraph that they might kill off a person, and you kind of hope they don't, and Jerome Squaller is one of those guys they don't kill off, thankfully, but I mean...
Yeah, Jerome is an example of what VFD comes to represent in this series. Someone who has good intentions and is a good person, but is not willing to act.
Right. And speaking of people with good intentions but missing the mark, should we go back to the village real quickly?
Well, yeah. Okay, let's go back to the village real quick, too. What's your point with the good intentions, no action?
So, they adopt the saying, it takes a village to raise a child.
A little bit too literally.
A little too literal. Yeah, they took that literally. I mean, they always muddy the line between figurative and literally, and they literally were all raising the kids. I mean, there was a specific place they were staying at.
No, they're figuratively all raising the kids. They're literally enslaving these kids to do every single task the village needs.
Right. No, they find these things, take them to be noble, but they miss the mark. It just proves how inherently selfish some of these guardians generally are.
And I think this is a trend that continues on as you go because the guardian in this one is the janitor for the town, a very nice person.
Oh, yeah.
Who, much like Jerome, is paralyzed by his inability to act.
Paralyzed by his Yeah, that's right, because he faints all the time.
Now, but why don't you go into the summary of this one? I'm tired of talking.
All right. So essentially, these kids move into this new town called VFD. It's essentially like an Amish village. They are firmly against anything technological. They are anti-fun. They are pretty much anti-everything. Tons of rules. Everyone in the community seems to be perfectly adamant and strict to the rules, but, except for one, Hector, who takes the kids in. And he is a sharp contrast to the previous Guardian. While he is cowardly, he does...
I actually think he's quite a bit like Jerome, in the sense that he knows what's right and doesn't do it.
I think he does, actually, because he does show an eagerness, if not reluctance, to help the kids, because he has invented a contraption that can get them, both of them, out of that awful town. But again, in contrast, it's the kids that have to abandon him due to...
for the greater good.
Right. An angry mob ensues. We'll leave it at that. For the greater good.
Well, I mean, we're not exactly avoiding spoilers here. The main plot of the episode is them finding the Quagmires in the town square.
Right.
Oh, this is also when we get our very groovy detective.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And his deputy.
Right. And his deputy. The Scatton detective.
Who, of course, solves the infamous murder of Count Olaf.
who is not dead in actuality. Just another poor, hapless VFD member that...
Nonsense. You saw the unibrow? You saw the tattoo? That was Count Olaf.
The tattoo. That is kind of the trademark detection for virtually everyone.
And this is the kids' second experience with the legal system, I want to say.
You're right. This is their second run-in with the law that also doesn't go well either. Well, then again, can we really call it a law? I mean...
There are lots of rules.
There are lots of rules, but it feels so tribal.
But yeah, this is the episode where there is the first real blatant murder that happens, which is the death of Jacques Snicket. And the first time where the kids blatantly break the law for the greater good, which is escaping jail and breaking every rule that they have in VFD.
Every rule imaginable, especially the no technology one.
And it for the very good of helping save the Quagmires and the nice man they met in the village.
Yes. So ultimately they escape the village and
kill a crow.
Kill a crow.
The demon that kills a crow.
That's right.
Which is rule number 1.
And that is one rule you do not want to break. Let's see. And then going from there, our heroes and antagonists find themselves in the carnival, right? No, not the carnival. The hospital.
Yep, this is where the butler sent him going to Heimlich Hospital, and that's due to kind of a series of unfortunate events. I said the name.
He said the name.
But they try to go into hiding. They run into the desert, find that they're not going to survive if they go there. But through happy luck, they end up finding some volunteers who they assume to be volunteers.
Oh, right.
For, VFD. Turns out, no, they're hospital volunteers who just sing to people.
It is just coming to me right now how many acronyms there are for those
wonderful.
3. Like I said, they dangle that stupid carrot in our faces for so long.
It's a veritable feast of delights. But they go to Heimlich Hospital, mostly on the pretense that they're with volunteers. Turns out, no. But at Heimlich Hospital, yet again we get the motif of people who are helpful in their intentions, but useless in their actions.
Oh, very much
the
so.
The singing cast.
Oh.
And we actually get the first real hint that the Barlers have for the series, which is the information they find in the records hall.
Yes. Now, he was a genuinely nice guy.
Blind and useless again.
Blind and useless as he may be, but this was a guy that had genuine affection for these orphans.
He did. And ultimately they had to betray him.
Yeah. Now, again, they telegraph all these things, and they keep you in suspense if, will they do it? Will they not do it?
Are they going to cut off her head?
Stay tuned and find out!
They don't.
They don't. I know they don't, but still. I mean...
But this is one of the episodes where we really kind of get into the meat of what the series is going to get into as it goes, which is the Baudelaires' own corruption as the series continues, because this is where the Baudelaires kind of try to pull an Olaf on Olaf, where they get into disguise, they fake credentials, they do their best to foil his plans by fighting fire with fire. Those very frail delinquents.
Those very frail delinquents. Can we call them frail? I don't think they're frail.
I mean, Violet was knocked out for this whole episode, and it was her best acting by far.
No arguments there.
Oh, that's harsh. That's not fair.
Anyway, going on from the hospital. Well, yeah.
Yeah, but that is the first episode where it really stays true to the books by and large, except for the information they discover in the vault, which is the knowledge that someone survived the fire.
Right, another carrot they dangle in our faces.
Right, but this is also the close to the finale, the penultimate episode, and this is where we kind of get the next motivation for the Baudelaires to discover who survived the fire. And but this is also a major diversion from the books, because in the books the episode ends with the homogenous assistant, the one who's neither a man nor a woman and is kind of androgynous.
Oh, that one, yeah.
In the books, they die in the fire.
What?
Yeah, this one, they say not to kill him off, which I'm glad for because his performance is wonderful. I love him.
Oh, I enjoy that whole
Or
troop.
her.
Yeah, yeah. I enjoy that troop in general. I didn't know they killed him off in the book.
They killed him off in the book.
Jeez.
But the episode ends with the Baudelaires having to burn down the hospital, which, fire with fire causes the whole place to burn down.
Right.
This episode also does do something unique from the books, which is the kind of horror scene thing where they kind of try to terrify the one lady.
Well, that's taken
where
more.
Olaf tries to scare her to death or something.
Right. No, again, they try and telegraph, are they going to kill her? Are they not going to kill her? But no, I mean...
They keep on playing with this thing, and they keep on choosing not to kill Guardians on purpose. Which I actually like.
I do too.
This is one place where the innovations of the show were actually good changes. But yeah, this gave Olaf something to do over the course of the episode. It's a unique change from the books, and it's kind of a fun motif to have this kind of Saw-like thing happen in a hospital. It's kind of cute.
It is. A little cartoony within itself in some ways, right? I mean...
Oh, yeah. And the motif of the Baudelaires fighting fire with fire continues as they kind of travel in Count Olaf's trunk to the next location, which is the Carnivorous Carnival.
Oh, God. Oh.
And this is where a major change happens from the books, which is the fortune teller lady, who in both versions, the book and the show, she is a VFD agent, but in the show they build her up as the librarian who joins VFD and takes the place of a different VFD agent, Kit Snicket.
Right. The librarian becomes a new recruit after the school, or
No, she gets recruited by Jacques Snicket unofficially, but doesn't really know anything aside from her own research into the incomplete history of secret organizations, which she had a copy of as well. Who knew?
Right.
And but the carnival is again where we see this motif of Claus, Violet, and Sunny putting on costumes and putting on an act to fool Olaf.
Which actually proves to work, strangely enough.
Surprisingly enough. And the new Guardians are the three circus freaks: the ambidextrous man, the contortionist, and the man with a slight hump in his back.
The hunchback, yeah. That's right, it is a slight hump.
Yeah, not the most freakish freaks you've seen, and frankly, Olaf's crew is much freakier.
I agree.
But it's also played up in the show. It's played up with very comedic elements on purpose.
Oh, yeah. I was still snickering throughout that whole two-parter. Right up until the end, that is.
Yeah, so this is an episode where Olaf is trying to get more information on the Baudelaires and who would have survived that fire. And simultaneously, the Baudelaires are getting information on VFD and finding out more information. This is where they get their first real information dump on VFD and discover for themselves all that they need to know. Which, huge departure from the books. They never get that information dump in the books. This is a unique thing to the show, which, again, works.
It does. And again, it just gives you that suspense that you have to stay tuned in order to find out what happens, because, I mean, they really do.
This actually is a major place where, if you read the books, this is where you have to question, well, what else were they going to change if they didn't kill off the androgynous person, and they actually made the fortune teller a long-running character? Are they going to actually kill her off? Are we going to see a chance for them to have someone on their side for once? Are they going to make a change in the books? And they do, sort of, because sure enough, the librarian does get killed off in this episode, but in the books, the bald man gets killed off with her as well.
The bald man. Yeah.
The tall one?
Yep, that he does.
No, he doesn't in the episode.
Oh. Who am I thinking of?
Just the librarian. She's the only one that dies.
Yeah.
And otherwise, they get recruited into the Olaf's crew. He backstabs them. Turns out he knew all along. And there's no difference from the book there. Sorry, I was saying something else. But that leads us into season 3.